Yeah, it's a bit of both. It's timing, but you also have to believe in yourself to make your own luck. When police searched Heath Ledger's apartment on January 22, 2008, they didn't just find pills, they also found a horror show, creepy clown dolls, bloody notebooks, torn pages from Batman comics, and a diary with disturbing pictures and the words "bye-bye" written in red by him. Today we're telling you the dark truth about Heath's last days. And the Heath Ledger was born on April 4, 1979, in Perth, Western Australia. His mother, Sally, was a French teacher, and his father, Kim, was a mining engineer who also raced cars. Heath and his sister Kate were named after characters from Wuthering Heights, a book their mother loved. By the time Heath was 10, he was already acting in school plays and was interested in choreography after seeing Gene Kelly do it. Even back then, he didn't think acting would be his career. He once said he wasn't the Heath had to choose between cooking and drama as an elective at school when he was 16. He chose drama because he wasn't interested in cooking. That small choice changed his life forever. He started taking acting more seriously by the end of that year and was so sure of himself that he quit school early instead of going to college. He briefly enrolled at Geelong Grammar School in Melbourne, which had strong drama programs, and for a while he tried to make it there, to focus on acting in a structured way, but in 1996 he quit school because he didn't want to study acting anymore. He wanted to live it. When he was 17, Heath and his best friend Trevor DiCarlo packed up their car and drove from Perth to Sydney, which was over 4,000 kilometers away. They had almost no money when they got there. Heath had only 69 cents in his pocket. That moment became a symbol of how little he started with. He thought Sydney was where actors got their big break, so he threw himself into acting. He went to auditions without an agent or any connections, and most of the time he was turned down. But he kept trying everything he could, and that time of struggle helped shape his acting style. He knew what it was like to be on the outside. Heath Ledger didn't ease into acting. He went straight for something risky. In 1996, he had a choice between two roles in an Australian show called Sweat. One was a swimmer, and the other was Snowy BS, a gay cyclist. He chose the cyclist without hesitation, because he thought if he wanted to stand out, he had to do something different. Sweat was filmed in Perth and had 26 episodes. It was Ledger's first regular TV role and showed how willing he was to take risks. But when the show aired in the UK years later, every scene that showed or even hinted at Snowy's sexuality was cut, leaving only scenes that barely made sense. Even before that, Ledger had already been having trouble with the role. In a 2000 interview, he said he felt completely lost while filming and didn't know how to move or what to do. He had nothing to do with his hands. He was ready to give up acting altogether. But he didn't give up. He kept going and got a small part on Home and Away, one of Australia's longest-running soaps. The role was as a laid-back surfer who got involved in a summer bay romance. It wasn't a big part, but it was enough to keep him on the right track. Around the same time, he also showed up in Ship to Shore. These small steps added up until his big break in 1999 with Two Hands was a crime comedy set in Sydney. Ledger played Jimmy, a teen who loses a gangster's $10,000. What happened next was fast-paced, chaotic, and tense. Critics loved it. They called it the Australian Goodfellas. It won Best Film at the Australian Film Institute Awards, and Ledger was nominated for Best Actor for the first time. Reviewers liked how quickly the story moved and how real the characters felt. His performance stood out. It was full of raw confidence, funny when it had to be funny, and dangerous when it had to be dangerous. Other actors like Rose Byrne and Brian Brown added to the energy, but Ledger's performance was what made the movie. Two Hands was a hit in Australia and got him noticed abroad. It was invited to the Sundance Film Festival, which opened up new opportunities. But before Two Hands, Ledger had already made another big move in 1997 when he played Connor, a young Celtic prince who led tribes against Roman invaders in the fantasy series Roar. Roar was an ambitious show created by Shaw Cassidy and Ron Koslow right after their hits like Xena and Hercules. Ledger acted with Vera Farmiga, who was also just starting out. The sets, costumes, and world they created looked good on screen, but it couldn't compete with shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. After 8 episodes, Roar was cancelled, and 5 more episodes didn't air until years later. Even though it didn't last, Roar was exactly what Ledger needed. He took his scenes from it. That show put together a demo reel and flew to Los Angeles, where he used the clips in early auditions. That reel opened the right doors, and when Heath Ledger, then 20 years old, walked into the audition room for 10 Things I Hate About You, the director took one look at him and said, "If this guy can read, he's hired." In a high school version of Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew, Ledger played Patrick Verona, a laid-back rebel. The scene that changed everything for him was a simple one. He danced through the bleachers singing "Can't Take My Eyes Off You" with a mischievous grin and perfect timing. It was an instant classic. The movie made over 4 times its budget, and Ledger became famous in Hollywood overnight. He didn't try to hide his accent or smooth out his edges. That was part of his charm. He seemed real, and he brought humor and warmth to the role. Many movie offers came in for the same type of role, but he didn't want to be the next teen heartthrob. He turned down every single one, and he almost flew back to Australia for good. Then came The Patriot, in which he played Gabriel Martin, Mel Gibson's character's oldest son, a young man who joins the fight in the American Revolution. The movie was a huge hit, costing $110 million to make, and was shot on multiple locations. Uniforms were studied at the Smithsonian to make sure the details were right. It opened worldwide and made over $200 million. Ledger was only 21, but he wasn't the pretty high school rebel anymore. He was fighting for a cause and showing fear and passion. He held his own against Gibson, who had been in the game for decades, which gave him credibility and made people take him seriously. Next came A Knight's Tale, a medieval adventure with rock music and swagger. Ledger played William Thatcher, a squire who pretends to be a nobleman so he can compete in jousting tournaments. The movie starts with Queen's "We Will Rock You" and crowd stomps that make it feel more like a concert than a period film. It should have been silly, but it worked. The story moved quickly, and the characters were fun. Heath Ledger's performance was loose and joyful, and in one scene he dances at a formal banquet while the music changes from medieval strings to David Ball's Golden Years. That moment perfectly summed up what the movie was: old things made new again. In 2001, he was ready for a more serious role. That year, he played Sononi Grotowski in Monsters Ball, which came out on February 8th. His character was a prison guard who lived with a racist family. His father Hank, played by Billy Bob Thornton, and his grandfather Buck, played by Peter Bull, were both openly racist. Sonny didn't follow their lead. He was kind to his black neighbor Reyes Cooper, played by Mos Def. He showed respect and warmth, and his family hated him for it. They called him weak. Sonny finally gives up and ends his own life in a scene that shocked and moved audiences. It felt real, and it showed that Ledger could play complex emotional roles. In 2003, he went back to Australia to play Ned Kelly in a movie directed by Gregor Jordan. Ned was a real person who was born in December 1854 and executed on November 11, 1880. Some saw him as a criminal, while others saw him as a hero who stood up to the British. Ledger grew a beard for the part and changed how he moved and spoke. He made Ned feel tired but strong, angry but thoughtful. The movie showed his rise from a poor boy to the leader of a gang that wore homemade armor during their final shootout in Glen Rowan. The film won an award at the 2003 ACTO Awards and confirmed Ledger's status as one of the best actors to come out of Australia. Also that year, the screenwriters suggested Ledger for the role of Andias Del Mar in Brokeback Mountain. When the studio first saw him in Monsters Ball, they didn't think he was masculine enough, and many actors had already turned down the part because they were afraid of how it would affect their image. But when Ledger read the script, everything changed. He saw how powerful the story was and called it the best script he had ever read. He didn't wait to be offered the part he asked for. He wanted to play Ineos instead of Jack because he felt more connected to Inez's silence to the teen. He said the role would require more from him than any other. The character was tough and closed off, but Ledger saw that as a challenge. He also liked that the story hadn't been told before, so it felt like a rare chance to play Inez. To play Inez, Ledger changed everything about how he moved and spoke. He said he wanted Inez to feel like a clenched fist, and his voice, mouth, and even the way he stood had to feel tight. He studied the Wyoming accent and added what he called a splash of Texas, practiced until it felt natural. Ledger grew up with horses, so the physical work was easy for him, but he still did study and got ready for. He spent months making Andy's walking feel slow and heavy. This showed how much the character kept hidden. He also thought about how Andy's would age over the years. You can see it in the movie. His face gets rougher, and his posture changes. Ledger said that if they didn't get that part right, the whole story would fall apart. When Brokeback Mountain came out in December 2005, it made over $178 million worldwide, and was nominated for 8 Oscars. Ledger was serious about the role from the beginning to the end. When asked how he felt about people calling the movie disgusting, Ledger said it was immature and sad. Jake Gyllenhaal later said that Ledger wouldn't even joke about the story. If someone tried, Ledger would shut them down because he thought the movie was about love, and that was all that mattered. In early 2006, when he was only 26 years old, Heath Ledger, who was only 19, was nominated for Best Actor at the Academy Awards. At the time, he was the 9th youngest nominee in that category. He didn't win, but the nomination changed everything. He went on to win the New York Film Critics Circle Award for Best Actor and the Australian Film Institute's Best International Actor Award. He was also nominated for a BAFTA, a Golden Globe, and a Screen Actors Guild Award. The New York Times compared his performance to that of Marlon Brando and Sean Penn. Even more risks were taken because he wasn't after fame anymore, he was after important roles. In 2005, he played Skip Inglole in Lords of Dogtown. Skip owned a surf shop in Venice Beach and helped form the famous Zeebo skate team in the 1970s. Ledger looked very different. He had long, messy blonde hair, a deep tan, and slurred speech from years in the sun. He even squinted all the time like he had never worn sunglasses. He stayed in character between takes and never changed his voice, not even at lunch. Hardwick said Ledger also acted like Skip off-screen. When the real Skip saw Ledger on set, he was shocked. He said it was like seeing a version of himself that had gone too far. Ledger didn't just play the part, he became the person. He showed the sadness underneath all the wild energy of a man who helped others rise, but got left behind. In 2006, he played Dan, a poet who was addicted to heroin and candy, which premiered at the Cannes Film Festival on May 25. To get ready, Ledger lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks and studied how heroin works. Was used and learned how to fake it right. His skin looked sick and his body looked weak. The movie was split into 3 parts, Heaven, Earth, and Hell. It followed Dan and his partner Candy, Abby Cornish, as they fell in love, became addicted, and then broke up. Their story included theft, sex work, and the heartbreaking stillbirth of their baby at 23 weeks. Heath Ledger's performance in the withdrawal scenes was painful to watch. He shook, cried, and collapsed, and it didn't feel fake. While they were different in age, she was 34 and he was 23, they hit it off right away. They were together for almost 2 years, though some reports say it was 3. They were often photographed together, and quickly became one of Australia's most talked about couples after they broke up in 2004. Naomi called it a beautiful relationship full of laughter and affection, saying they had good times. The breakup was calm, and they stayed on good terms. When Heath died in January 2008, Naomi was heartbroken because she thought he had so much more to give. It was 2004 when Heath went to Calgary to film Brokeback Mountain. That's where he met Michelle Williams, and something clicked right away. Jake Gyllenhaal remembered them making googly eyes during rehearsal, and Anne Hathaway said there were sparks from the start. Michelle hurt her knee and tore a ligament in a sledding scene, and Heath stayed with her through it. Michelle later said it felt like it was meant to be, and the couple got together quickly, within a few months. By the time they started promoting the movie, they were engaged and knew they were going to have a daughter. Matilda Rose Ledger was born in New York City on October 28, 2005. Heath was 26 years old and said being a dad was more than he ever expected. He called Matilda observant and wise.
He said being a dad was the most important thing in his life before that, because he felt like he was just drifting, but now he had a reason to be grounded. Heath and Michelle lived together in Brooklyn and shared parenting. When Michelle worked, he stayed home. He once joked that she was the nanny, and he was the nanny. A close friend said that seeing him with Matilda was like looking at a painting. It just felt right. But in September 2007, Heath and Michelle broke up. There were different stories about why. One said it was because Heath was using drugs, and a source told People magazine that Michelle didn't want their daughter around him after taking him to Promises Rehab Center in Malibu in March 2006, when Matilda was only 5 months old. Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker in The Dark Knight was unlike anything people had seen before. Michelle reportedly asked for drug tests before he could see Matilda, but not everyone saw it that way. Director Terry Gilliam said the problem began during the Brokeback Mountain Awards season. He wasn't into that world. He didn't care about red carpets or trophies, Michelle said. They started to realize they saw life differently, and eventually it became too much. Christopher Nolan didn't want to make another cartoon bad guy or criminal mastermind. Instead, he wanted to make a character that could exist in the real world, a terrorist without a cause, a man whose only goal was to destroy order. Ledger's Joker wasn't after money or power. He wanted chaos for its own sake. He wanted to show that the structures that held society together were weak. He wrote down the Joker's ideas, spoke in the Joker's voice for hours at a time, practiced laughing in the middle of the night, and stayed up watching horror movies. Disturbing videos, and drew pictures that would later be included in what became known as the Joker Diary. The diary itself was unsettling. It had pictures of clowns in hospitals and comic panels from old Joker issues. Things got more chaotic and unstable on the last page, where he wrote just 2 words, "Bye-bye." His father would later show this page in a 2013 documentary. Ledger also went to great lengths with his voice training. With the help of coach Jerry Grenell, he studied ventriloquist dummies to learn how to make his voice feel separate from his body. The Joker's look was also carefully crafted. Instead of clean lines and bright colors, Ledger wanted a face that looked like it was real. Christopher Nolan gave him a book of Francis Bacon's paintings, especially the distorted portrait of Pope Innocent X. During the 3-hour sessions, Ledger and makeup artist John Cagalon would move his face all the time while the makeup was being put on. This made the white paint crack in natural ways, giving the face a texture that felt real. Even when he wasn't needed on set, Ledger showed up in full costume and character. Michael Caine once forgot his lines after seeing Ledger in makeup for the first time. Christian Bale said Ledger kept surprising him every day. But off camera, Ledger still found moments of happiness. His mood was sad. He missed his daughter deeply. His insomnia got worse. He started taking more prescription drugs. In interviews, he talked about being tired, but unable to stop thinking about how he was planning to go back to New York. But his acting coach and close friend Jerry Grenell saw how much he was struggling and tried to change his mind. Heath looked mentally and physically tired, like he was carrying too much at once. Grenell begged him to come to Dublin, instead to take a break, slow down, and recover. "Come to Dublin, you're not well," he told him. For a moment, Heath didn't answer, but Grenell could tell he was thinking about it. But Heath shook his head and said, No, I have to go to New York. I have stuff I need to do." He said it firmly, like he was sure it was necessary. Ginniel still thinks about that moment. He thinks it was a turning point, maybe the last one. Heath's last conversations with his family were quiet and normal, which makes them even harder to forget. He texted his sister Kate on chat, which they did all the time, and told her he was going to buy cigarettes. She responded with a joke. They used to joke around with bad puns, and that was the last message they sent each other on the phone earlier that day. She told him not to mix medications, and he laughed it off with a familiar response, Katie, I'll be fine." They laughed together, and he said he'd call her in the morning. She told him she loved him, and that was it. When police went into his Manhattan apartment on January 22, 2008, they found something that didn't feel like a living space, but more like a carefully built world showed how dedicated he was to playing the Joker. Comic books, notebooks, clown figures, and research materials were spread out across the loft, along with recordings of his voice testing pitches, practicing laughs, and getting into character. There was no mess, and everything was in order. He had been studying past versions of the Joker, from Jack Nicholson to Cesar Romero, determined to deliver something that showed control, obsession, precision in bed with him. Was the On the Nightstand was Malcolm Gladwell's book, which the movie was based on. Director Stephen Gaghan, who wrote the script, got the call while waiting at an airport with his wife. Ledger's father and a friend had written Gaghan's phone number on the cover of the script, and they called him from inside the apartment, where he was still trying to figure out what had happened. Gaghan remembers the exact moment he fell to the floor. His legs gave out and he couldn't stand up. "Stop shaking," he said. It had never happened before, and would never happen again. The project that Leonardo DiCaprio was supposed to work on was immediately cancelled. The medical examiner confirmed that the death was caused by acute intoxication from a combination of 6 prescription drugs, including 2 painkillers, 2 anti-anxiety drugs, and 2 sleep aids. None of the drugs were taken in excessive amounts. Each one was within the safe limit, but the combination of them was dangerous. The drugs worked against each other. His nervous system slowed down his breathing so much that his body shut down while he slept in 2017. A forensic expert said he might have lived if only the painkillers had been taken away, but they weren't. And even though the report said it was an accident, the truth was that he was too stressed out, too medicated, and by himself at the time. It all went wrong.